Tonight, the Supreme Court's landmark 8-1 ruling on gun rights and domestic violence is sending shockwaves across America. The decision clarifies that the Second Amendment is not absolute, especially when it comes to protecting those at risk from domestic abuse. This ruling will shape legal battles and policy debates for years to come. The court's message is clear. A person's history of dangerous behavior can justify temporarily restricting their access to firearms. For millions, this is not an abstract debate. It's about real safety for survivors, families, and law enforcement. The decision strengthens laws designed to disarm abusers, offering a shield to those living in fear. As we unpack this historic moment, we'll explore its background, immediate effects, and what it means for the future of gun rights in America. The story centers on a crucial question. Does the Constitution protect gun ownership for those deemed a credible threat to loved ones? Today's ruling provides the Supreme Court's most definitive answer yet. It upholds a decades-old federal law that's been vital in the fight against domestic violence. Now the focus shifts to ensuring these protections are enforced for all who need them. To grasp today's ruling, we must revisit the law at its heart. A 1994 federal ban on gun possession for those under domestic violence restraining orders. This law was a response to the grim reality. Guns dramatically increase the risk of homicide in domestic violence cases. The legal journey has been fraught, balancing public safety with the Second Amendment. In 2008, the Supreme Court affirmed an individual's right to own a gun for self-defense, but noted this right isn't unlimited. The 2022 Bruin decision then set a new, stricter test. Modern gun laws must align with the nation's historical tradition. This led to a wave of legal challenges, with some courts striking down gun control measures lacking direct historical precedent. Enter United States v. Rahimi, under a restraining order for alleged assault, challenged the federal ban after being found with firearms. The Fifth Circuit sided with him, citing no clear historical parallel for disarming domestic abusers. This created a direct conflict with other courts and forced the Supreme Court to step in. The stage was set for a ruling that would clarify the balance between gun rights and public safety. Today, that answer has arrived. On September 27, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered its verdict, an 8-1 decision upholding the federal law. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the Second Amendment does not protect those found by a court to pose a credible threat to others. The majority opinion emphasized America's long tradition of disarming dangerous individuals, even if historical laws didn't mention domestic violence specifically. The ruling clarifies that the right to bear arms is not absolute and can be limited to protect public safety. The government can disarm those who are not responsible, law-abiding citizens, including those found to be a danger to their families. This is a major victory for the Department of Justice and victim advocacy groups. The decision provides clear guidance for lower courts on applying the history and tradition test without invalidating common-sense safety laws. The broad coalition of justices signals strong consensus. Protective orders are more than paper, they're legal tools to keep survivors safe. The court's message, the right to bear arms, does not include the right to endanger your family. This ruling is a crucial step in protecting those most at risk. Not all justices agreed. Justice Clarence Thomas, author of the Bruin decision, dissented. He argued the majority misapplied his history and tradition test, insisting there's no founding-era law disarming citizens based solely on perceived risk without a criminal conviction. Thomas warned that the majority's approach could open the door to modern gun control measures lacking historical precedent. He maintained that only laws with direct historical analogs should survive constitutional scrutiny. The majority, however, looked for broader principles in the historical record, not exact matches. This philosophical divide highlights the ongoing debate over how to interpret the Second Amendment. Thomas's dissent will fuel future legal challenges and debates over gun rights. While his view didn't prevail, it ensures the argument over the Second Amendment's meaning is far from over. The court's split reveals just how complex and contentious this issue remains. The Supreme Court's ruling exposes a critical problem, the gap between law and enforcement, especially in states like Texas. Texas prohibits those under protective orders from having guns, but lacks a uniform process to ensure abusers actually surrender their weapons. Unlike states with mandatory proof of relinquishment, Texas has no statewide mandate, creating a dangerous loophole. Survivors often have no way of knowing if their abusers' guns are truly gone, leaving them in fear. Advocacy groups have pushed for stronger enforcement, but legislative efforts have stalled. The result, Texas has one of the highest rates of intimate partner homicides involving firearms. The Supreme Court's decision puts new pressure on states to close these enforcement gaps. Now, with the law's constitutionality settled, the focus must shift to real-world implementation. Behind the legal debate are real lives at risk. For survivors, a protective order is only as strong as its enforcement. If abusers keep their guns, the danger remains. Survivors describe living in fear, knowing their abuser still has access to firearms. Advocacy groups warn, without closing enforcement loopholes, today's survivor could become tomorrow's victim. Studies show an abuser's access to a gun increases the risk of femicide by 500%. The patchwork of enforcement across states means a protective order's power varies by location. Experts argue for national standards to ensure consistent, effective gun relinquishment. The Supreme Court's ruling is a powerful tool, but it's up to lawmakers and law enforcement to use it. The cost of inaction is measured in lives lost and families shattered. Closing the enforcement gap is a moral imperative. Legal experts and advocates quickly weighed in on the Supreme Court's decision. Gun safety groups hailed it as a victory for survivors and common-sense regulation. The NRA and other gun rights advocates criticized the ruling, warning it could justify broader restrictions. Legal scholars see the decision as a course correction, offering a more flexible standard for evaluating gun laws. The broad majority signals consensus that public safety can justify some firearm regulations. Experts stress the ruling's real impact depends on state and local enforcement. Without effective processes to remove guns from abusers, the law's promise remains unfulfilled. The legal battle may be over, but the fight for real-world safety continues. The Rahimi decision's reasoning could affect other gun laws beyond domestic violence cases. The court's flexible approach to history may help uphold regulations like red flag laws, which allow temporary gun removal from those deemed dangerous. The focus on dangerousness as a basis for regulation could strengthen laws targeting those with mental health crises or certain criminal histories. However, the court tied its decision to specific judicial findings, not broad bans. Sweeping restrictions on law-abiding citizens may still face legal hurdles. The ruling carves out a narrow, important exception for targeted, evidence-based gun restrictions. Future court cases will define the limits of this exception. The story of the Second Amendment is far from over. Tonight, the Supreme Court has affirmed a critical protection for survivors of domestic violence. The 8-1 ruling in United States v. Rahimi makes clear the right to bear arms does not extend to those deemed a credible threat. This is a major step forward, but not the end of the fight. Laws are only as strong as their enforcement. Closing dangerous loopholes is now the urgent task. Real safety requires clear, mandatory firearm surrender laws and dedicated resources for enforcement. The debate over gun rights and regulation will continue, but this decision is a victory for public safety. Citizens must stay informed, support common-sense solutions, and demand action from leaders. The court has provided a tool. Now it's up to all of us to ensure it protects lives. The safety of our communities depends on turning this legal victory into real-world change. The work to protect the vulnerable continues, starting now.